Let's go.
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege and pleasure of being joined by my brother, friend, Murshid, Sheikh, and friend, Shaykh Wahid Azal of the Nur Fatimiyya Sufi Order, who returns in part 30 in this series of dialogues and conversations that we've been having. And in part 30th, Sheikh Wahid will cover the recent events going on with Iran and Israel. So without further ado, welcome, Noor alaikum, and Khush Ahmadid to Sheikh Wahid Azal.
أعوذ بالله العلي العظيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والنور المهتدين واللعنة الله على الظالمين كلهم أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين الطيبين وإنما البهاء من الله على الواحد الأول بعزة وجلال اللهم احفظنا وكل الصادقين تحت حفظك وحراستك من الشياطين الظالمين في كل حين يا حق آمين. I seek refuge in God, the High, the Supreme, from Satan, the cursed, the damned, and obscene. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Praise be unto God, the Lord of the worlds, light of the rightly guided and banner unfurled. May the curse of God befall all those who oppress, every last tyrant without duress. And peace and blessings ever shine upon Muhammad and his purified line, the noble, the radiant, the truly divine. And behold, the splendor alone be upon the first unity enthroned, with majesty and splendor known. O God, protect us and the sincere. Keep us ever beneath thy guarding sphere, from tyrant devils dark and near, in every moment, in every year. O truth, O real, amen we say, guard us firm upon thy way. Amma ba'd. Whew, what a time to be alive. I was expecting something like this to come this year. I even kind of announced something along these lines in that podcast I made with what was that guy who made the podcast? I can't remember him. When I was talking about the fall of Assad uh, with one of these YouTubers, and I said that in 2025 we're going to see some big events happening, in this war between Israel and Iran will happen. Most likely, the regime will collapse. I have been following events over the last 24 hours. I've gotten very little sleep during this time. I've been in contact with a few people in Iran, one particular family, an acquaintance who, at least where they were living, one of the apartment blocks that they were living was actually hit by one of the Israeli missiles. This is a suburb in northern Tehran. And it's very unfortunate because this family lost one of the members of their own family during the Woman Life Freedom, who was murdered on the streets of Tehran by IR security people. So if anything has happened to two of their family members are presently unaccounted for, although my feeling is that it's not the case that they've been eliminated, but that the communications out of Tehran are not good, and that's probably why we're not hearing from them. But if that's so, it's a real tragedy. And it also says that, tyrants, oppressors, dictators, it doesn't matter what side they're on. These people are criminals. And we're unfortunately living in a world that is being controlled solely by criminals. Whether they wear turbans or suits and ties, it's the same thing. And until the people of the world fully comprehend this fact, nothing will change, and innocent blood will be spilled over and over and over and over again. However, let's get to the facts of the matter. One of the biggest hypocritical actions that America and Israel, and let's just be very clear about the fact that Israel is nothing more and nothing less than an extension of the United States, right? Israel is just basically an American base in the Levant. But this act of treachery that Trump and his administration showed over their negotiations with Iran will be marked as not only a day of infamy, but the day that any remaining American credibility completely tanked. One does not have to support the Islamic Republic of Iran. I despise the mullahs, and I'm very much on record for that fact. But the issue is that no matter how bad the regime, no matter how bad the government, the fact is that in negotiations, when you are using blackmail and military blackmail as a bargaining chip to negotiate, then you cannot be trusted to keep your word about anything. And let us not forget that we wouldn't be here had Donald Trump in 2017 not trashed, or 2018 not trashed, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that Iran and the five other world powers, the European Union, Russia, China, etc., negotiated with Iran over his nuclear development program. It was as a consequence of Donald Trump withdrawing the United States out of it and then putting, back-breaking sanctions on Iran once again, that this basically forced the Iranians to begin their enrichment process of uranium beyond what they had negotiated in 2015. The Europeans also didn't follow the stipulations of the very agreement that they had made. And so effectively, it was America and the Europeans that killed that agreement. Now, we can believe or not believe what the regime in Iran is saying, that they don't have any nuclear intentions. I don't believe them because, a power like that who's trying to push its weight around will certainly be looking at some form of nuclear weaponization, just as Israel itself did, as Pakistan did, as Turkey has been seeking for a while. But the issue with Israel is not so much about Iran having nuclear weapons and threatening it. The issue with Israel is that if Iran officially does obtain the capability of having nuclear weaponization, then this will create an arms race in the region, which will then basically push Israel's nuclear hegemony off the table tomorrow. And that will be the end. So this is all about maintaining a regional hegemony. And Iran and the so-called axis of resistance, which is now essentially dead as of the fall of Assad, we're trying to create some kind of a strategic pushback against both Israeli and American hegemony in the region, but they miscalculated, and they miscalculated on so many different levels. One doesn't even know where to begin. They also miscalculated here in a very big way. They didn't anticipate that the Americans would be acting in such bad faith. That while they were sitting with this Witkoff, who was sitting with this Iranian delegation trying to get Iran to agree to some kind of a minimal enrichment of uranium, that all of a sudden, just as they're about to enter the next critical stages of the discussion, that Israel would suddenly do what it did. And let us be very frank, that there is no way that Israel is doing anything rogue. Whatever Israel does has the American backing all the way. The weaponry is American. The know-how is American. The money is American. And so money, know-how, etc., basically makes you an extension of the United States. So this was an American operation, and that they got Israel to do it is a very transparent, plausible deniability on the part of the Trump administration. But I mean, Mr. Trump himself then gave away gave it all the way on his Truth Social a few hours later by saying that this was, yes, we did it. We've been behind this the whole time. We warned you, blah, 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 blah. So essentially, Mr. Donald Trump's idea of negotiation and diplomacy is blackmail. And it's very interesting that this sort of attitude is, almost verbatim reminiscent of the Third Reich and the Nazis. This is the way that these people negotiated with Czechoslovakia, with Poland, with Austria, etc., during the 1930s. And as we are watching America begin to descend into full-blown fascism under Donald Trump, internally, now it's externalizing its fascism across the planet. We don't have to like the Islamic Republic of Iran or the mullahs. I don't. I despise that regime completely. But an attempt to try to change the regime in Iran by military force is not only not going to work, but it's going to unleash forces in that region and beyond that will be almost impossible to contain immediately. And potentially it has that potential to basically tank the world economy at a time when inflation is coming to the point of hyperinflation everywhere. At the point where we've just come out of that whole pandemic area. It's what is it? Almost 2 years, 3 years now since the end of COVID lockdowns. World economy was slowly beginning to recover, and then all of a sudden this happens. As of 2023, which is what we're witnessing, what we're experiencing right now, is an extension of that. And what Netanyahu gave the carte blanche to, what he put his finger on, should give a lot of people pause now about what actually happened on 7th of October 2023. We are coming to understand that that event was not solely a rogue act of these various militant factions of Hamas, but rather because Netanyahu's back has been against the wall since he got reelected, and there are outstanding criminal charges against him, that he has by any means necessary tried to keep himself in power. So therefore, arguably, what happened on the 7th of October 2023 may have been a false flag. How that would have transpired, God knows. But one of the pieces of evidence that we have is that actually the Hannibal Directive was in effect on that day, and that the IDF was ordered by its own superiors to fire on other Jews. So some of the incidents that happened in the kibbutzim near the border with Gaza, these were not massacres undertaken by these Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas fighters, but these were massacres that were ordered by the higher-ups of Israeli military command with the Hannibal Directive in effect. This is all coming, and now this is despite the fact that at the time, at October 7, just right after it, the world media was ablaze with all kinds of false stories about what happened, 40 beheaded babies and all that. We've now found out this is all bullshit. There was none of that happened. So this has been basically Netanyahu's gambit from that moment in order to save himself politically, to drench both Israel itself as well as the region as a whole in oceans of blood. And now they've turned their guns on Iran. But I tell them, even if the regime in Iran does collapse, even if they do kill Ali Khamenei and other amongst the senior brass of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that it is not what they're thinking, that they're going to bring peace and harmony to that region, is a pipe dream. We saw with our own eyes what happened with the fall of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the mayhem that was unleashed out of Iraq, that led straight to the Arab Spring and straight to the birth of ISIS and straight to the mayhem that happened during the last decade in Syria and Iraq. If they go ahead and do this with Iran, not only are you going to exacerbate the refugee problem that you have been decrying, by the way, constantly, that is the basis of your populist politics, whether in Europe or in the United States right now, but you are going to destabilize that region, Europe, and ultimately North America and everywhere else simultaneously. So the question now is, what's going to happen? What are Russia and China going to do? Are they going to sit on the sidelines? Can they do anything? What is going to be the consequence of this Israeli-American attack on Iran? China and Russia right now are not signaling anything, but I am almost certain that both Moscow and Beijing are contemplating an asymmetrical response on their part. Because if the regime in Iran falls from the point of view of Moscow and Beijing, that means that they're next. So they cannot sit on the sidelines over this issue, right? So expect the unexpected. It is very possible that within a week, maybe sooner, maybe later, that we will suddenly see some extremely aggressive moves by the Chinese around Taiwan and in these other islands in the Indian Ocean. So if America and its Five Eyes allies were worried about China before, they have a lot more to worry about now. Because what this entails, what the actions of the Trump administration, Netanyahu, entails from the strategic point of view of China is an assault on the BRICS itself. Okay? So they cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. China's People's Liberation Army has not engaged in any kind of serious military engagement in a very, very long time. The only ones that it has engaged in has been within its own borders with the some of these Muslim populations in the eastern part of China, etc. But they are mobilized. And if the Chinese decide to go for a full mobilization, they're also a nuclear power. And perhaps even in their arsenal, they may even be at parity with the United States, although, officially that's not the case. But if it comes to that, we are looking down the barrel of a nuclear war very shortly, like in a matter of, so someone needs to back down. But unfortunately, we have complete lunatics, whether in Washington, whether in Tel Aviv, and also these servile lapdogs in Europe itself, whether it be Keir Starmer, Macron in France, etc., or here in Australia with Anthony Albanese, who's a complete dickhead. So this is the problem we face, that we have just, as of yesterday, although it was already happening, but as of yesterday, World War III is now officially fact. We are in the period of the Third World War. And where this is going to go, Allahu Alam, but it is not going to be good. So this is the time that pushback from populations around the world needs to occur. This is the time that we need to realize that our governments in the West and elsewhere are captured governments, and that our protests are only as good enough to governments and officials and elected representatives that listen. When you have a society, when your governments and your public officials are all captured and all basically answerable to big, powerful lobbies that are foreign or big corporations with interests, when all of this, where the real focus is in a war that is happening amongst the elite, the OCGFC that, what's his name talks about, Shahid Bolson, the owners and controllers of global financial capital. We need to understand that this situation, that this world order that we're living in, where internal squabbles for territory and spoils between the elites of the world is putting innocent people in the line of fire of these big, powerful entities and militaries who are acting on the interests of the OCFGFC. We need to really understand that if we want this to stop, that this elite must be overthrown, that the power of this OCGFC, the owners and controller of global financial capital, must be stopped, that we need a new global revolutionary movement to go for the jugular of these people, right? Otherwise, all ourselves, our loved ones, everything that we hold dear will be, if this escalates into nuclear war, we're all dead. It is as simple and straightforward as that. Now, Israel yesterday attacked most of the Iranian nuclear sites. They hit the Natanz nuclear reactor. Apparently, there's now detection of radiation, which means that if they have punctured this reactor in any lethal kind of way, that part of Iran is going to be Chernobyl on steroids. And not only is it going to make that particular area of Iran radioactive, but this radioactivity is going to spill across the borders of Iran itself to other parts of the Middle East. This is how criminal this act is. Where is the United Nations? Where is the European Union? Where are all these international institutions that pride themselves on what they claim they pride themselves on, not only to condemn the actions of Israel and the United States, but to hold them accountable? What good is your United Nations where its Security Council is controlled by powers like the United States, who can veto any resolution by just their mere veto of it, when other members of the Security Council make a decision? These institutions don't work. They don't work, and they're in the pocket of these big powers. So we need to really seriously think about the fact that either these elites have to be taken out, or we're all dead. It is as simple and straightforward as that. They have not attacked Iran. They have put the people of Iran in the same kind of danger that they put the people of Gaza, that they put the people of Lebanon. But Iran is a big country, so it's not going to be a cakewalk. This campaign that Netanyahu started is going to go for a couple of weeks, and there will be serious, destructive tit for tat between the two forces. Already, we saw what the Iranians are capable of with their missile technology. They took out, some of the Iron Dome systems of the Israelis. So you have these massive, sophisticated missile shahabs hitting in the center of Tel Aviv. Parts of the center of Tel Aviv from the pictures I've seen are a mess. And as much as they're trying to spin it, we are seeing that no, Iran is, if the restraint element in the part of Iran is completely gone, they will go for broke, right? And so when that happens, when this escalates in this tit for tat, obviously, eventually, these American bases in Bahrain, et cetera, are going to be hit, which is exactly what America wants, exactly what Trump wants, actually. And then, the unthinkable will unfold. And like I said, China and Russia are at that point not going to be sitting on the sidelines because that means them as well. So we are, not even, I would say, we were probably 1 second away from 12 a.m. on the doomsday clock right at this moment. We have not been here at such a dangerous level since probably the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the United States and Israel are the main aggressors. If the Second World War was started by an aggressor such as Nazi Germany, this time around the aggressor is clearly the United States and its client, the Zionist colonial settler state of Israel. Over to you.
Yes, Sheikh, you're absolutely right. And just letting the world know that the Persians, there's a reason why they're called the immortals. They are the cradle of civilization, and there's no power on this world that can destroy the Persian people. That being said, after World War One, the League of Nations came up and it proved itself to be obsolete in World War Two. And now in this current scenario, the United Nations has proven itself to be obsolete. So when all of the dust settles, we're going to see a new organization which comes up after World War III, or this present conflict to hold equilateral order in the world stage, where the US, just because of their veto, allows so much atrocity to happen. And I've seen this with my own eyes, especially when visiting London. You have the City of London Corporation, then you have the global financial people that are in charge. So it all goes back to the money changers. And even those people that are religious, right? Even what did Jesus do, right? He flipped the table on the money changers inside the temple. There's also an occult Masonic aspect involved with this, where it started on Friday the 13th, which is like a big day, right? With Jacques de Molay being burned at the stake for the Knights Templar. Then you have the aspect of the Third Temple that they're all obsessed with, about rebuilding the Third Temple. So it's all interconnected with these maniacs who are just trying to bring destruction of the world. And what did Netanyahu do? He fled to Greece, right? So these people, they are criminals, they are cowards. And if they think that they will destroy the Iranian Persian people, trust me, they have outlasted bigger and badder forces than you, if you take a look at history for a second. And that's
Yeah,
what we're dealing with, you know?
yeah. Well, Iran outlasted the Mongols before that, the Alexander the Great's armies. Iran has endured, the British during the 19th century, or late 19th century, early 20th century, and on it goes. So we will endure, but a lot of people will be hurt. There's no question about it. I mean, already it's happened. Over 70 people died from these missiles. But one thing I would caution people is to be extremely weary and skeptical of the war propaganda that they're hearing um, from the mainstream media. Okay, don't buy anything these people are saying right now. We're in a war, and so everything that is coming out of the mainstream media, and even some of the alternative media, is war propaganda. Right? Israel's claims yes, they hit, but also what they're not reporting that an F-15 was shot down in Iran. Okay, so these are the very sophisticated fighter aircraft of Israeli. The pilot was apparently a woman. So already the Iranians have shot one Israeli plane down. And that means that some of these, what is it, the SS-13s or what, I don't know what the name is, that these anti-ballistic systems that the Russians gave to Iran, Iran already has these. Just a minute. It's calling me. So let me just keep talking. Let me just write to this person real quickly who's trying to.
Yeah, Sheikh Wahid Azal is absolutely correct because I saw this pointed out in the Pakistani news as well that the Iranian Air Force authorities and their defense forces shot down the Israeli jet and they captured this woman pilot. So, yeah, Iran is more than enough capable of defending its territory and holding the aggressor responsible. And this aggressor has violated multiple international laws and treaties, bombing Yemen, another sovereign country, Lebanon, Gaza, Palestine, Iran. I mean, who's holding this criminal accountable, right? That's like a rabid animal in a corner trying to bite as many people as it can because it knows its time is up and it's been exposed to the world for what it is. Even now, you have pundits and nations and other news organizations which previously didn't condemn Israel. They know the jig is up now. So it's
The
over.
jig is up, but still, these governments are captured. The Europeans are all captured. Australia is captured. New Zealand is captured. I mean, America is just completely captured. I mean, this Donald Trump on the campaign trail, on the hustings, claimed to be the peace president. I want peace, right? What do you call this? This is peace? I mean, this is irrespective of the fact that as much as whatever one feels about Qasem Soleimani, who I didn't particularly like very much, but the actions of Donald Trump in late 2019, early 2020, when he ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, should have proven to the most lockjawed MAGA supporter that your president was not exactly a peacenik by any stretch of the imagination. His actions in Syria, setting up a permanent base in Syria and refusing to leave, bombing Syrian forces during that time. This guy's not a peacenik. So, the average American needs to understand that your government is captured, right? And your vote does not matter. So long as these powerful lobbies like AIPAC and not just AIPAC, there's many of them. It's not just AIPAC. AIPAC is the one that is out there, but there are many others. So long as your country is owned by big money, you don't have a democracy. You haven't had a democracy for a very long time. The last sitting president that attempted to change the state of affair was assassinated in broad daylight in Dallas, Texas on the 22nd of November, 1963. Your country has been an oligarchy ever since, whether we're talking about the military-industrial complex or whether we're talking about, foreign interest lobbies and political action committees, that sort of thing. Your government does not represent you, whether at the level of Congress, whether in its executive branch, and now look at your judiciary, your U.S. Supreme Court is basically a rubber stamp of all of this. I mean, beginning with that landmark case back in the last decade where they ruled that corporations are entities like individuals, which is the most ridiculous piece of jurisprudence that has ever been mentally defecated by a judicial body in any stage of legal history. So that is your country. So the American voter, and especially these desperate people in the Rust Belt of the United States, and people who are thought that by voting for one candidate or other back November 5th last year, now need to realize that you count for nothing. That the only way that your voice will count and people will listen to you and your life will get better is for you to take matters into your own hands, to listen to the advice of Thomas Jefferson and overthrow your government. Right? Thomas Jefferson advised you very clearly that it is healthy for every couple of generations to have a revolution because systems have this, process where they corrupt after a while. So it's like gardening. You have to prune your system and do it like a gardener. And America is long overdue for one. And, this state of affairs that Americans are living with today, as we're quickly finding out, and as, this very partial release of the JFK file is beginning to prove to people, your government is an oligarchy. Your president was murdered in broad daylight in front of his wife, in front of a public, right out in the open in Dallas, Texas, in Dealing Plaza in 1963. And the state of affairs that has flowed from that ever since has been a continuous thing. And this system of yours has put you in a state of perpetual war, the forever wars that are both perpetrating and victimizing people around the world. It is not just you. You are being victimized, but the people around the world are being victimized. And that is why the average American needs to open their eyes and put on their thinking caps and stop blaming immigrants, stop blaming Mexicans, stop blaming. The American economy on, for example, in areas such as agriculture or the services, etc., is fueled by illegal immigration. If this wasn't the case, if this wasn't the case, then why is it that your average white or blue-collar white American refuses to work in the farms, refuses to work in service industries in certain sectors? Why is it that every Burger King or McDonald's that you go to, or every Dunkin' Donuts that you go to in California or Arizona or New Mexico or Texas, there's a Latino working on the other side? Because you're not willing to work for the low wages that these people are willing to work for, right?
And standing 12 hours on your feet.
And standing 12 hours on their feet. Work animals, right?
Yep.
No white, blue collar, or white collar American is willing to do that anymore. Why? Because the sense of entitlement and the lack of any proper worth ethic in the American mentality since pretty much the 1970s has made the situation the way it is today, right? It has made the white American, also in Europe is the same thing, lazy. All right, so let's deport all of these people out of the United States, unleash these Gestapo ICE forces on all these innocent Latino people, and then watch your economy start to tank from a local level, then to regional, then to statewide, and finally nationally, right? What is happening right now within the United States is that the system is cannibalizing itself. And it's cannibalizing itself while also attempting to cannibalize the world. Why? Because they know they're declining.
Yeah.
China is at the point of becoming the world global superpower. And these white honkies don't like that. And it's as simple as that. It's a case of very open book, shut case, racism and white supremacy. White supremacy is being challenged by the rising star of China. Now, I don't like authoritarian systems. I don't particularly like the Chinese in the sense that they are, authoritarian power. But facts are facts. They have gone beyond America. And these white honkies are going crazy. And so this is what they're doing. They're cannibalizing their own people. And then they're trying to cannibalize the rest of the world at the same time. But as much sophisticated military technology that is at the disposal of the United States and Israel, there comes a point that even your technology is not going to do anything for you anymore, right? It comes a point that people start to resist. The penny drops, the veils drop. People start to realize these systems of manipulation in place. For example, we're now finding out that the reason for my suspension from Facebook last week had less to do with me writing about the Ahmadi religion of light and plagiarism, but because a week after they suspended me, Israel's attack on Iran occurred. Then when I game planned all of this with OpenAI, and also then you saw some of the questions that I put to it and got it to analyze the situation for me. The AI is saying that it's very plausible that because the powers that be understand that I'm both against the Islamic Republic of Iran and Western imperialism, that my particular voice is the most dangerous voice of all, right? It is easy to corral people into pro or anti-NATO position. It is less easy to control people like myself who put some pox on both of their houses. We are the true enemy, so they target us, right? Because we're not controlled opposition, people like us. So, they come after us. And this is one of the reasons for we're finding out for the ban and the suspension by Facade Book. So, folks need to start waking up. I have advised a lot of people to get the hell out of that Meta network. Let's begin to bankrupt this son of a bitch, Mark Zuckerberg, by not
Do you have any
participating in the system.
alternates, Shake? Do you have like
Well,
any
we
alternates where we
can.
can all?
There are many alternates. All of these big corporate platforms are as bad as each other. Whether we're talking about Meta, whether we're talking about Reddit, whether we're talking about, but these encrypted systems like Telegram, like even Signal, they are much more secure and much more autonomous in what you can do. I mean, you really have to be egregious in what you do for them to ban you, right? But the encryption itself, all of these things can be obviously hacked, but there's much more safety and much more autonomy on the subscribers of such services than what we're finding on Meta. I mean, I'm hearing things from all over the place that, even though Meta, Facebook has been rogue for quite a while, ever since the second election of Donald Trump, they've even gone beyond what they were previously. And they were bad previously. So they don't even have to have a reason. If some official or bureaucrat at the defense ministry in Tel Aviv or somewhere else, has a list of names and your name happens to be in it because of, data harvesting, then Meta Corporation will suspend you without any reason, without any due process, nothing. Even though that suspension may go against the laws of the jurisdiction that you are in, right? And then to add insult to injury, your own government and the system and these supervisory bodies, whatnot, rather than do anything for you, have also hired these bureaucrats that are not willing to confront these big corporations on your behalf, even though that you are a taxpayer and you're paying, these bureaucrats as salaries, right?
Mhm.
So our governments have failed us. These predatory, corporations like Meta, etc., they're preying on us as predators. They're vampires, these people. So what are we going to do? And this is the question that every person needs to seriously start to ask themselves. How much longer are we going to allow to be predated on by these people, right? At which point do we decide that we take back our sovereignty and autonomy from these archons, these techno archons of capital, as I call them, right? That is the issue, that we need to take back our autonomy from these sons of bitches, right? Because now we have entered a stage that can potentially either destroy the human race, and this is, people need to really, really think about this. It's not even if, when this gets bigger, when it starts to pull other big powers into its orbit, Russia, China, North Korea, etc., this is going to go nuclear, right? Are you going to be a battery for the matrix, meaning Meta, data harvesting, etc., or are we going to resist it and try to at least attempt to create a better world from the control of these techno archons of capital, these parasites?
And Sheikh, you're right, because we need to create, like you always stressed in our lectures and in the teachings you have given me, of the temporary autonomous
Autonomous
zone.
zone, yeah.
We need that, especially when it comes to, because this World War III is a physical war, but it's also a digital information war as well. So we need our own place where these different corporations and bots and people who serve the empire or are servitors of the empire cannot penetrate that circle.
Yeah, that's exactly. So we need to start practicing this TAZ. Now is the time to really start to implement the TAZ. So,
Yes.
in essence, I look at my suspension from Facebook as kind of a blessing in disguise, because this now forces me to then push the envelope, whether with my
Hmm.
government to try to find out, how badly my government has been captured and its
Hmm.
bureaucracies are completely dysfunctional and laws cannot be implemented unless you're loaded and are a millionaire and you can dish out hundreds of thousands of dollars to lawyers to pursue a small case for you in a courtroom. Um, this whole situation has been a real learning experience for me. even as a trained lawyer, um, I'm realizing that, my government in this country, and it's certainly the same case in the United States, is a fixture. It's
Yeah.
just optics. It's captured. It's just basically the bouncer at the door of these techno-capitalist parasites, nothing more.
And Shaykh Wahid's voice is so important because ever since Meta banned him, there's been so many people that reached out to me. Where's Shaykh Wahid? You know, what happened? Because people are hungry for your voice, for your wisdom, for your leadership as the living mirror of the Bayan. So, especially this situation, it's no coincidence that right before this situation, they take you out of there because people wanted to know your
Mm.
analysis of these things. So yeah,
But let's
I'm
remind
glad that
people
you're
they did
covering
exactly
this.
the same thing to me back during Woman Life Freedom. Right in the middle
Yes.
when all these Iranian girls were being murdered by the regime in Iran, and I raised my voice, Meta suspended me for 90 days, right? So, which just defies comprehension. Why would they ban me for speaking out against the regime in Iran, right?
And
Well,
I remember that. I
yeah,
remember when they zucked your account.
yeah. So, we know what these people are about. We know what this Meta Corporation is about. Mark Zuckerberg is a piece of shit. I'm not
Yeah.
remotely, you know, sue me for saying that. Um, but we need to start to move away. People who have any conscience, they've made us dependent on their services, right? And they're abusing us. There is no such thing as a free lunch with these big corporations. And now you see that whatever you do, unless you pay for it, they're going to treat you like trash. So people of conscience, as a protection of their own human rights, in my opinion, should start to desert these platforms, eliminate their accounts, right?
Mhm.
Do no business with Instagram, do no business with Facebook, do no business with WhatsApp. Right? There's Signal, there's Telegram, there's other services which are encrypted. They're not foolproof. We don't have a foolproof service yet, but that is coming. I'm sure there are programmers out there, app makers that are, in the process of figuring that out. So, but these companies need to be deserted. We need to
Yeah.
hit them in the pocketbook, put them out of business altogether. So, in a sense, I'm now being forced to get away from these platforms to try to brainstorm a revolution.
And inshallah, I think something good comes out of every scenario, as I've seen that it's all about just adapting to the circumstances and improvising. Now that we see that Iran has hit back Sheikh, I think there was a second missile strike a few hours
Yeah,
ago as well.
yeah.
How do you see this going forward within the next 1 week, 2 weeks?
It's going to get pretty bad because every time Iran escalates, then Israel will escalate. Then, further escalation. This will obviously then force the hand of Iran to start to hit these bases in the Gulf, whether the American ones
Mhm.
or even the oil installations. As you probably saw, Mohammed bin Salman came immediately out and made a public statement condemning Israel's attack, but he's not so much doing that because he cares. He's doing that because he's worried that if this thing escalates and spirals out of control, that the Iranians will hit all of those oil installations in northern Saudi Arabia, and that will
Yes.
seriously hemorrhage the Saudi economy in a very significant way. If you have tankers burning in the Persian Gulf, or if there is a block to the Persian Gulf, or if there's any kind of safety issue for tankers coming in and out of the Gulf, that pushes that spikes the price of global oil, and it's going to start affecting other areas of the economy. And the first countries that are going to tumble economically are going to be Saudi Arabia and these Gulf Emirates. They're all going to their economies will collapse within a couple of days. It's
Yeah, yeah. And
just as
you
simple
know
as that.
what's gonna happen is that I remember a few months ago I was seeing on the Pakistani news where you had commanders of the IRGC that were in Pakistan. They were
Yeah,
signing like a defense deal with each other.
yeah, I know.
So
Yeah,
now if Iran has Russia or China or Pakistan that are behind it, and they're all these people are all nuked up,
yeah.
and the strike on that nuclear facility is gonna like spread radioactive radiation across the east. I don't think these people are going to sit idly by.
Not only that, here's how dangerous the situation possibly is even right now. Back in the late 90s, there were all kinds of rumors that were circulating that Iran actually did acquire nukes back then from some of these old Central Asian republics of the former USSR. And that they just bought them, like from republics like Azerbaijan, Armenia, Kazakhstan, etc. There's always been, obviously obficial denial on all sides about this. But even if there is 5% truth to this, right? That means that the Iranian security establishment and deep state, if the situation becomes existential to Iran, they will start to use these nukes that they acquired back in the 90s. So these are like, the megaton, warheads, right? We're talking about Tsar bomba level, that if they drop even one of these things, it's going to like basically turn the entire country of Israel into glass in 2 seconds. Okay. And obviously then that will trigger a response and on we go. Yeah, all these countries are nuked up. Pakistan and India are both officially nuked up. Iran is unofficially nuked up, but doesn't have to, or maybe is only now acquiring the capability for complete weapons grade enrichment, which they didn't have before. So all of this by Netanyahu and the Israelis has always been an excuse. They're going for broke, right? Because this situation since the 7th of October 2023 has spiraled out of control, even though they have killed an awful lot of people and they literally decapitated Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But yet, Israel is a pariah state. The world as a whole is more and more recognizing Israel as a rogue state on the same level as was Nazi Germany. And the main enabler of this Zionist settler colony is the United States. We all know this, right? America itself has become more and more widely known as a rogue state. And countries like China and Russia are not going to sit around any much longer and exercise the restraint that they have so far. Russia, has, from what we understand, has only deployed maybe 5% of its forces in this war of attrition in Ukraine. But if Putin were to call up a complete general mobilization of Russia, right, and really went for broke, this is something unprecedented. These Russians could roll right into Berlin tomorrow. And there would be nothing that would stop them. So we would be at the stage that we were in at some of the worst stages of the Cold War, especially in those years when Reagan was first president before Gorbachev became Secretary General, where it looked at any moment war could break out, nuclear war could break out between the United States and the USSR. So we're there, we're back there again, but this time it's even more dangerous than it was back then. But the problem here is the United States and Israel. The power of the United States, America is a rogue state, Israel is a rogue state. You see how warped internally these societies have become. And so, the nations of the world need to start to think very seriously about the future, a future beyond the Pax Americana, a future beyond the American domination and unipolarism of the planet, because this is what they're fighting for, to keep that intact. But it cannot be kept intact because America's own behavior on the world stage, particularly since the end of the Cold War, has been anything but salutary. It has destabilized the world even worse than it did during the Cold War. And now we're finding out things that America did internally within its own territories during the Cold War that boggled the mind, let alone now that restraint of the Cold War has left it. But like I mentioned in that first part of the goal of the unwise, right? We transitioned from the end of the Cold War, from the moment of the collapse of the Soviet Union, the civil war in Yugoslavia, almost to the next day, to a clash of civilizations and a war against this Muslim world. So this tells you that the military-industrial complex of the West, and particularly the United States, are thinking along those Orwellian lines, the forever wars. This system cannot abide peace. This system does not want peace on the world. Its entire industry, economy, and raison d'etre, functions on the premise of a forever war. This is the warmonger. So, I say that the revolution begins in more and more people deserting American products, not buying American, not dealing with companies such as Facebook, etc., and starting to go into this TAZ on an
Yeah.
economic level and even on a digital level.
That's the only viable solution because we have these two pariah states, the United States and Israel, who are holding the rest of the world hostage. Majority of your world's people just want to be happy with their families. They want to be left alone, have prosperity, try to search for happiness and independence in their lives. But then you have these two nations who are holding the rest of the world hostage when it comes to economic prosperity, world policy, education, businesses, everything is done by the dollar. So everyone needs to collectively distance themselves from these two groups.
Yeah.
It's like what the governments of UK, France, and Canada did recently. They released a joint statement condemning Israel. So now all of the people with common sense and nations and media are coming together, and the people that are the Zionists, whether they control Hollywood or American government or whatever organization that they have a big hold of, they know their time is up. People are not falling for it anymore. They see these pariahs for who they are. And the Persian people, they are a glorious people. If you look at the history of Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, and all of the great people who did so much greatness for the people of that land, and
Mm.
you're not going to do anything to them. They were there before you, and they're gonna be there after you.
Inshallah, I pray, I pray, I pray, I pray. But we're dealing with the legions of hell. I mean, has such a eschatological Zoroastrian kind of narrative attached to it. Because Israel and America are, I mean, if you were to metaphorize, some of the things that Zoroastrian scripture talks about, the Thrashkerti, the war at the end of time. I mean, America and Israel may as well be the drudge. And this regime in power is part of that, but on a different side of the dialectic of it. And here, not just the Iranian people, but all people of goodwill are in the crossfire sandwich between these two. So, the people of the world need to take their destiny into their own hands, right?
Yeah.
And if there is a will and a collective will and a collective will for people to come together, these motherfuckers cannot do anything. And I will say it as plainly as that. They cannot do anything. Their AI, their technology, nothing, right? Because the will of a people, a collective that come together as a single will, is the will of God itself, as far as I'm concerned. And we can
Hmm.
take these bastards down and create a better world without them. These people are criminals. These criminals must be put in their place. And not only are they criminals, as far as I'm concerned, there's a metaphysical dimension to this. These are the legions of hell itself.
Yeah.
And they need to be put in their place. This is about, if we want to create a viable, peaceful, sound, balanced world, then these elites in power must be taken out of power. And it's as simple and straightforward as that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, Sheikh, we have to work towards a world where how you have laid it out in the Bayan in terms of making sure that the elements, buying and selling the elementals are not there. People are treated properly in their way of life and their education, the way they want to survive, make a living with their families. So it's all the answers are in the Bayan on how we combine the teachings of the Bayan and with the temporary autonomous zone and move forward with that. You already gave the people a blueprint.
Yeah, the blueprint, we have it. The blueprint is there. It just has to be implemented. And there must be a collective mass of people who are intent on implementing it and making it happen beyond even my personality. This is not about my project. This is a project for humanity. And
It's
that
for
means
everyone.
if we are serious about a better world, then these are the steps that need to be taken in order to make it happen. And it's as simple as that. And like Martin Luther King, I will say, I have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. I might not make it to the promised land, but I've seen it. The blueprint is with us.
Hmm.
These are the obstacles that need to be overcome. The road to it is right in front of you. You can make it happen. But people have to come together. They have to get off of their complacency. Right now, we're in the middle of a world war. And so this is not just a battle between powers and elites against each other. This is a battle for the soul of the world itself now, against all of these Ahrimans and all of these demons all together.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say in this present situation, you have one part of the world, which is Ahura Mazda, and then you have these two entities, the US, the financial heads, Israel, City of London Corporation, right, which are the Ahriman. And you're right, people have to stand up against it. And what, like the Zoroastrian teachings, right? Think good, know good, do good. We all have that potential. Right now, we're in a bad state in humanity, but I think we just have to do right with the time that's been given to us and
Inshallah.
try to make sure that the world moves forward in the correct direction.
Inshallah. Inshallah. This is what we pray. I game planned with OpenAI what is possibly going to unfold. I think it might not be a bad idea to link that in the podcast so that
Yeah,
people can
definitely.
read that for themselves in light of developing events. Because I think, I've kind of trained this AI module over the last 2 years, and it's become starting to get really smart. And the game planning that it we did together yesterday, as a matter of fact, was profound. And it has given these possible scenarios, and one of them is actually has unfolded based on its prediction that if Iran retaliates, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. Now that it's this escalation is happening, I think people need to read what this game planning is saying.
And I will link that in the description below the blog site where Sheikh Wahid has given us the detailed explanation. And basically, it's like geopolitical chess, the way
Yeah,
OpenAI has put it
yeah,
all out there.
yeah.
And yeah, you're right. One of those things has taken place already.
So
So,
let
Sheikh,
us
is there anything I failed to ask you? Anything you wish to address?
just, people be on their toes. Also realize that in this time of war, our internet services are basically portals of our surveillance. So, if this sort of thing bothers you, then consider leaving these platforms because of that alone. So right now, Facebook is a big giant eye of Sauron, right? If surveillance bothers you, consider getting off of Meta, whether it's
Yes.
Facebook, Instagram, even WhatsApp. Okay, get off it completely. There's
Yeah.
Telegram, there is Signal, and there's also all kinds of other services, and all of them are encrypted and they're not associated with these big American tech companies, right? If these big corporations and American systems are sanctioning economies, then the people of the world should start to even take leverage and that power themselves and start to sanction these companies and these countries by withdrawing their participation in the services of these uh, big corporations of techno capital, of techno feudalism.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sheikh. And I think people, especially the younger ones who are so
Yeah,
savvy with technology, I look at some of the comments on YouTube and TikTok, and these are advanced souls who have,
yeah, they are
who
advanced souls. There are a lot of it.
they know.
Because it's not an American company, is actually still. I mean, it's a crazy place, but it's a Chinese owned, right? So why don't I mean, as a compromise, why don't people transition from Facebook to TikTok just on a temporary ad hoc basis right now? Start to depopulate Facebook and Meta Corporation. Get off of the Zuckerberg's platform altogether.
You know, one thing that just came to my mind is right after Trump came to the White House, they had this meeting at the White House where Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, they were all like sitting together, right?
Yeah,
So they're all under that under that leadership. They're serving
yeah.
the empire.
Yeah, they're all serving the empire, and they were there all at the inauguration. Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, um, all of these big tech. Peter Thiel, all of these people were there, right?
Yes.
These are the techno archons of capital. These people are the enemy of the human race. As simple as that.
Mhm. Yep. And on a concluding note, I would advise everyone, please follow the temporary autonomous zone, follow the teachings of the Bayan, follow everything that Shaykh Wahid Azal has struggled his whole life and sacrificed very personally to give this truth to you, the people. So please do the right thing and try to leave this world in a better condition than it was given to us. So
Inshallah, we pray.
without further ado, until we conclude for part 31, Sheikh, any concluding remarks?
No, that's all I have to say. Just people keep your eyes and ears open.
And with that, Nur alaikum and see you all next time.
Alaykum nu.